Okay, shall we start? Alright, good day Jaguars, good day future LPTs. It's Sir John here and welcome to the second session of our science major rationalization with Sir John. And this time we are going to continue our rationalization. We are already in item number 26. Okay, but before that, allow me to express my heartfelt apologize now for a quite short delay of the sessions since I have a very tight schedule and also I just recovered from my fever. So don't worry, I will try my best to cope up with all the missing or shall we say delay. Okay? Uh, sa ato ang schedule. So, I hope that you will bear with me. Okay? As much as possible, we'll make the most of the remaining time so that we can finish our um, calendar. Okay? And so that we can, you know, really prepare for the upcoming September 2025 LED. Okay? So, please comment down if you are ready. All right. So I think we are all set. Okay, so let's proceed. We have here item number 26. The question is, which of the following is an example of potential energy? A, a rolling ball. B, a stretched rubber band. C, a boiling water. Or D, a light bulb glowing. Okay, this is a very easy question. The answer for this is, okay, a stretch rubber band. Okay, so um, what's the basis of our answer? We have this term, this one, okay, potential energy. Let me get a pen. Okay, let's write this one. So during your examination class, do not be afraid to write something on your test paper, okay, because you paid for it, so you can do whatever things that you want to do sa mga test papers ninyo. Okay, so just not do too much para hindi siya ma-observe ng proctor ninyo. Okay, so you can encircle or underline the the hint of the question. Okay, yung basehan ninyo why you choose that answer. Okay, so for this item, okay, we are asked for the example of potential energy. Now, what is a potential energy? Okay, it is the energy stored in an object due to its position, condition, or configuration. So, kumbaga, ito yung mga bagay na hindi gumagalaw. Okay, it is steady. Okay, a stretched rubber band has elastic potential energy stored in it due to the deformation of the band. Okay, when released, this energy can be converted into kinetic energy as a rubber band returns to its original shape. So in a rubber band, okay, in this case, a rubber band can, okay, or may have potential energy or uh, kinetic energy. Okay, however, when it is stretched, okay, so it has elastic potential energy. Okay, that's why our answer is letter B. So, bakit mali si A, C, and D? Okay, a rolling ball. Okay, so just visualizing a rolling ball, okay, gumagalaw siya. Okay, of course, that's an example of kinetic energy. Okay, so when we say kinetic energy class, take note that that is the energy of motion. Again, kinetic energy, that is the energy of motion. Okay, next is the boiling water. So what type of energy is present in boiling water? Okay, the answer for that is thermal energy. Okay, which is the energy related to temperature of water. Okay, thermal energy is not potential energy, though the water's position in a container could give its potential energy, okay, or gravitational potential energy. But the boiling water itself is at it's about kinetic energy of molecules. Okay, so yung when the temperature increases, okay, the movement of the molecules also increases. So that is the kinetic energy of the molecules. That's why letter C is also wrong. Okay, so X A, X C, C, and also D. Okay, so a light bulb glowing. So what type of energy is present there? Okay, we have electrical energy being converted into light and heat energy. It involves energy transformation rather than storage, making it an example of active energy, not a potential energy. So our answer for this is letter B. Okay, so let's proceed to the next item. Number 27. Newton's third law states that for every action there is an letter A, equal reaction, B, unequal reaction, C, opposite reaction, or letter D, both A and C. Okay, the answer for this is letter D. Okay, both A and C. Okay, so let's state the Newton's third law of motion. Okay, do you remember that? Okay, the Newton's third law states that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Okay, I want you to say it with me. Okay, one, two, three, go. Newton's third law states that for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Okay, this means that if one object exerts a force on another object, the second object exerts an equal force in the opposite direction on the first object. Therefore, both the equal and opposite parts of the answer are correct in this case, in this question. Okay, that's why um, when you play something, okay, okay, or ikaw mismo, you will lean on the wall, okay? So the Newton's law of motion that can be applied to that is the Newton's third law of motion. Okay? It states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Okay. So why are other options incorrect? Letter A, equal reaction. Okay, well, the action and reaction forces are equal in magnitude. They are not sufficient to describe the Newton's third law fully. Okay, the forces also must be in opposite direction to follow the law completely. Okay, so kumbaga, letter A is just halfway correct. Okay, so it cannot fully, okay, explain the Newton's third law. Okay, so we'll mark it as wrong. Next, see letter B, an equal reaction. Can take note, class, that Newton's third law specifically states that the reaction force is equal in magnitude to the action force. So there is no unequal force. Okay, both are of the same magnitude. Okay, so wrong C, letter B. And see letter C, opposite reaction. Okay, while the forces are indeed opposite in direction, the law also emphasized that they are of equal magnitude. So this option alone doesn't fully capture the essence of the law. Okay, so again, the law states that, okay, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So that is both A and C. Okay, next, number 28. Which enzyme is responsible for unwinding DNA during replication? A. Ligase, B. Primase, C. Helicase, or letter D. DNA polymerase. Okay, so the answer is, okay, the answer for this item is helicase. So we have here the different enzyme, no, for DNA replication. So for helicase, this is an enzyme, okay, responsible for unwinding the DNA double helix during the DNA replication. So siya yung taga-unwind. So I compared helicase to scissor, kumbaga. Okay, so that's my technique. So I compared the enzyme to a thing so that I can remember it. So for me, helicase is like a scissor, no, tagkat. Okay, unwinding the DNA double helix. Okay, it breaks the hydrogen bonds between the base pairs, separating the two strands of the DNA, creating the replication fork where replication can proceed. Okay, don't worry. On our intensive sessions, no? Okay, so we are going to dig deeper. Okay, and now I can present there a picture or a video perhaps, okay, of about this, okay, DNA replication with this enzymes para mas, mas recall ninyo or mas maintindihan ninyo yung mechanism ng bawat enzyme. Okay, so let's talk why the other options are incorrect. So first, we have ligase. So ano ba si ligase? So DNA ligase is responsible for joining the sugar phosphate backbone of DNA fragments together. So for ligase, I compared ligase to a glue. Okay, kumbaga siya yung gluer, okay, sa enzyme during the DNA replication. It is essential for sealing the gap between the Okazaki fragments on the lagging strand, not for unwinding the DNA. So, kanino yung unwinding the DNA? Okay, that's for helicase. Si ligase, gluer. Okay, siya yung nag-seal sa gap between the Okazaki fragments. Okay. Next, si letter D, DNA polymerase. So, DNA polymerase is responsible for adding new nucleotides to the growing strand during replication. Okay, while crucial for elongation, it does not unwind the DNA. That function is specifically carried out by the helicase, I mean. So si polymerase, kumbaga siya yung builder. Again, polymerase builder. Okay. So si primase, but again, si primase siya yung initiator or starter. Okay, si ligase is the gluer. Okay, si helicase is the cutter, okay, or the scissor, and si polymerase is the builder. Okay, take note of that. I hope that's clear. Okay, now let's proceed to the next item. We have item number 29. In cellular respiration, what molecule is the final electron acceptor in the electron transport chain? Okay, is it A, water, B, oxygen, C, NAD plus, or D, carbon dioxide? Okay, the answer is letter B, the oxygen. Okay, so take note of this. Oxygen is the final electron acceptor in the electron transport chain, or ETC, during the cellular respiration. Okay, this is under cellular respiration topic. Okay, at the end of the ETC, oxygen combines with the electrons and protons. Okay, so that will form water. Okay, so this step is crucial for maintaining the flow of electrons through the chain. and preventing a backlog, okay, backlog that would halt the production of ATP. So meaning to say oxygen is very important, okay, in the ETC during the cellular respiration, okay, to have, okay, the product, okay, to fulfill the goal why there is a cellular respiration. Okay, so let's explain why the other choices are incorrect. First, we have water. Water is the product of the final step of electrons transport chain. So it is not the final electron acceptor. Again, it is the product. Water is the product. The oxygen combines with electrons and protons to form water, but oxygen itself is the final electron acceptor, not the water. So this is wrong. Okay, next, letter C, NAD plus. Okay, this is involved in earlier stages of cellular respiration, particularly in glycolysis. Okay, and the citric acid cycle, where it acts as an electron carrier. Okay, so ano yung papel ni NAD+? Okay, it is an electron carrier. Okay, ano yung electron acceptor during cellular respiration? Oxygen. Electron carrier, NAD+. Okay, however, it is not the final electron acceptor in the electron transport chain. Okay, that's pertaining to NAD+. So wrong C, option C. Let's proceed to option D, carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is produced during the cellular respiration, specifically in the citric acid cycle or the Krebs cycle. Okay, this is the byproduct of the breakdown of glucose. It is not involved in accepting electrons during the electron transport chain. Okay, so si carbon dioxide again is the byproduct of the breakdown of glucose. Okay, so mali si letter D. Our answer is letter B, oxygen. Okay, next, number 30. What is the process called where mRNA is synthesized from a DNA template? Is it translation, transcription, replication, or translocation? Okay, the answer is, okay, the answer is transcription. So let's talk about transcription. Okay, transcription is the process where the messenger RNA is synthesized from a DNA template. So, kumbaga, from RNA to DNA. Okay, again, transcription, RNA to DNA. During transcription, an RNA polymerase enzyme reads the DNA sequence and produces a complementary mRNA strand that will later be used in the protein synthesis. So, I want you to remember that during transcription, no, okay, it is the process that is made from, okay, mRNA synthesized from DNA template. Again, transcription, mRNA is synthesized from DNA template. Okay. So, I think I said it different earlier, no? Again, I would like to make clear on that. Okay, sa transcription, mRNA is synthesized from a DNA template. So, galing DNA, okay, to mRNA. Okay. So, let's explain why the other options are incorrect. Okay, translation. So, see, translation, that is the process where the mRNA is read by ribosomes to assemble amino acids into protein. This occurs after transcription and is the next step in the central dogma of the molecular biology. So see translation. Okay, so from mRNA going to protein. Okay, again, translation, mRNA to protein. Okay, next, replication. So for replication, okay, it refers to the process by which DNA is copied to form an identical copy of itself before cell division. This is distinct from transcription, which involves synthesis of RNA from DNA. So, si transcription kanina, di ba sabi ko? So, from DNA to RNA. Okay? So, itong si replication, DNA to DNA, identical copy of itself. Alright. So that's it. Next, translocation. Let's mark this red so that we'll not get confused. See, translocation, that refers to the movement of mRNA and ribosomes along the mRNA strand during the translation or movement of chromosomes segments in genetics. It does not describe the process of synthesizing mRNA from the DNA template. So this is not related to the other choices. So this is wrong. Okay, so let's have a review again. For transcription, okay, mRNA from DNA, or in other words, that is DNA to mRNA. Okay, and then next we have the translation, okay, see translation mRNA to protein. Again, translation mRNA to protein. See replication, DNA to identical copy of itself, or DNA to DNA, identical copy of itself. Next, number 31. Which hormone regulates the circadian or circadian rhythm in humans? Is it A, melatonin, B, insulin, C, glucagon, or D, dopamine? Okay, I I hope that you are familiar with these hormones. Okay, the answer for this is okay, melatonin. So what is melatonin? Of course, it's in the question, no? So melatonin is the hormone that regulates circadian rhythm in humans. Okay, it is produced by what gland? Okay, what gland produced melatonin? Okay, very good. That is the pineal gland in the brain. Okay, especially in response to darkness. Melatonin helps to regulate sleep-wake cycles, signaling the body that it's time to sleep. That's why bago matulog or at night, mas mas prefer ng karamihan na patayin yung ilaw. Okay, that is to stimulate the production of melatonin para makatulog ng mabilis. Okay, so the production of melatonin typically increases in the evening, promoting sleep, and decreases in the morning, promoting wakefulness. Okay, so si melatonin pangtulog na siya. Okay, okay, that is the hormone responsible for regulating the circadian rhythm in humans. Okay, how about the other options? Let's talk about insulin. So, ano yung insulin? So, insulin is a hormone produced by what organ? Okay, the pancreas. Again, insulin is produced by the pancreas. Okay, function niya, regulate the blood glucose level. Again, insulin produced by pancreas, function, regulate blood glucose levels. Okay, this is not related to the circadian rhythm. Okay, insulin is not related to circadian rhythm. It helps cells absorb glucose from the bloodstream to use for energy or store for later use. That's what insulin is. Next, we have glucagon. Ano naman si glucagon? Glucagon is also produced by the pancreas and works in opposition to insulin. So, kumbaga, siya yung opposite ni insulin. So, it raises blood glucose levels by stimulating the liver to release the stored glucose. Okay, because the liver, okay, serves as a storage of excess glucose. So, kung ma-detect ng body na nagkukulang ng glucose yung katawan natin, okay, so it will give signal to the liver to release the stored glucose. Okay, that is the role of the glucagon. It does not have a role in regulating circadian rhythms. So next we have dopamine. Familiar? Okay, familiar with the dopamine? Okay, dopamine is a neurotransmitter involved in several brain functions that includes motivation, pleasure, and movement. While it can influence mood and alertness, it does not regulate the sleep-wake cycle or the circadian rhythm of humans. Okay, so say dopamine mostly is just for no, mostly pleasure, movement, motivation, things like that. Okay, so our answer for this is melatonin. Next, number 32. Okay, in genetics, a test cross is used to determine A, the genotype of an organism, B, the phenotype of an organism, C, whether an organism is heterozygous, or D, both A and C. Okay, the answer for this is both A and C. Okay, I are you familiar with the test cross? Okay, let's explain. A test cross is a genetic cross used to determine the genotype of an organism exhibiting a dominant phenotype. Okay, this is done by crossing the organism with a homozygous recessive individual, one that has two recessive alleles. Okay, again ha. So si test cross, okay, ang how can we say that? Si test cross, gamit siya to determine the genotype of an organism that has or exhibiting a dominant phenotype. Okay, so paano siya ginagawa? Okay, i-cross siya sa homozygous recessive individuals. Pag sinabi nating recessive, uh, meaning to say their traits are covered up by the dominant alleles. So, pag sinabing homozygous, both alleles are the same. So, pareho silang recessive. Okay, so ganyan yung test cross. So, if an organism is homozygous dominant, all offspring will exhibit the dominant phenotype. On the other hand, if the organism is heterozygous, okay, or having different alleles, yung isa dominant or isa recessive, that is heterozygous, the offspring will have a 50% chance of showing the recessive phenotype, thus revealing the genotype of the original organism. In other words, a test cross helps determine both the genotype and whether the organism is heterozygous or homozygous dominant. Okay, so we are going to uh, give an illustration for that on our intensive session. Okay, since I cannot present here images. Okay, why are the other options are incorrect? Okay, so let's start with the first one, letter A, the genotype of an organism. Okay, while the test cross does indeed determine the genotype, this option alone does not fully encompass the purpose of the test cross. okay, which also identifies whether the organism is heterozygous. So half correct na siya. So it lacks the argument, okay, to support that it is a test cross. Next, letter B, the phenotype of an organism. The phenotype of an organism is the observable trait, which can often be deduced directly from the observation, rather than requiring a test cross. A test cross is specifically used to investigate the genotype, not the phenotype. Okay, so this is wrong. Okay, take note of that, ha. Test cross is specifically used to investigate the genotype, not the phenotype. Okay, letter C, whether an organism is heterozygous. Okay, this is a part that of what a test cross can determine, but it doesn't fully describe the purpose of the test cross, which also involves determining the genotype of the organism. So pag isama natin si letter A and C, that would make the argument strong or correct. Okay? The genotype of an organism and whether an organism is heterozygous. The answer is letter D. Next item. Excuse me. Okay, number 33. During the Calvin cycle in the photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is fixed into a stable compound using which enzyme? ATP synthase, Rubisco, amylase, or NADPH? The answer is letter B, Rubisco. Okay, so are you familiar with Rubisco? Okay, that is ribose 1,5-biphosphate carboxylase oxygenase. Okay, that is a type of enzyme present during photosynthesis. Okay, that is the enzyme responsible for fixing carbon dioxide into a stable compound during the Calvin cycle of the photosynthesis. Okay, it is a catalyst, okay, of the first step of the cycle, where the carbon dioxide is incorporated into the 5-carbon molecule called ribulose biphosphate, or RUBP, okay, forming two molecules of 3-phosphoglycerate. Okay, that is the key step in the photosynthesis, as it enables plants to convert the atmospheric carbon dioxide into organic molecules that can be used for growth. So on our intensive session, okay, I have there images, okay, an illustration, that would explain this. Okay, I will do further explanation of this there. Okay, so this time let's explain why the other options are incorrect. Okay, letter A, ATP synthase. Okay, so this is a type of enzyme that plays a role in the production of ATP, okay, primarily during the cellular respiration and the light-dependent reaction of photosynthesis. This is not directly connected with the Calvin cycle. It does not fix carbon dioxide at all. Okay, so that is very wrong. This is very wrong. So let's mark it red. Okay, next, letter C, amylase. Okay, lalo na ito. Si amylase is an enzyme involved in breaking down starch into sugar during digestion. Okay, not in photosynthesis. Okay, it has no role in carbon fixation. Okay, saan to mangyayari? Sa bibig. Okay, next, si NADPH. So si NADPH is an electron carrier that is used in a Calvin cycle to provide the reducing power necessary for converting the 3-phosphoglycerate into sugars. But it does not directly fix carbon dioxide. The Rubisco is the enzyme responsible for carbon fixation. Okay, so when you read the question and you see carbon dioxide is fixed into a stable compound, or carbon dioxide is fixed, okay, that's enough phrase for you to say that it is a Rubisco. Okay, so Rubisco is the enzyme responsible for that. Okay, next item, number 34. Which structure in the brain is primarily responsible for memory formation? Again, which structure of the brain is primarily responsible for memory formation? Hypothalamus, cerebellum, amygdala, or hippocampus? Okay, the answer is letter D, hippocampus. Okay, the hippocampus is the primary structure in the brain responsible for the formation of new memories and consolidation of short-term memories into a long-term memories. So it plays a critical role in both spatial memory like navigation and episodic memory like recalling events or experiences. So damage to the hippocampus can lead to the difficulties in forming new memories, such as in the case of Alzheimer's disease. Are you familiar with that disease? Okay, or other related conditions that is somehow associated with memory loss. Okay, so that is hippocampus. Okay, why are the other options incorrect? So for letter A, hypothalamus, this is involved in regulating vital functions like temperature, hunger, thirst, or emotion, but it is not directly responsible for memory formation. So si hypothalamus, hindi siya ano, connected with memory formation. Okay, it plays a role in the body's overall homeostasis, not memory storage. Okay, so this is wrong. Next, si cerebellum. So the cerebellum is responsible for motor control and coordination. I want you to remember this. Cerebellum, motor control and coordination. Again, cerebellum, motor control and coordination. Okay, see hypothalamus, homeostasis. Okay, temperature, hunger, thirst, and emotions. So, or you can just use homeostasis as your hint for hypothalamus. Okay? So next is amygdala. Okay? So the amygdala is primarily involved in the processing emotion, in processing emotions, particularly the fear and pleasure, and is also involved in emotional memory. So kumbaga si amygdala, it is more on emotion aspect. Okay, however, it does not play the central role in the memory formation itself. The hippocampus is the main structure responsible for it. Okay, so that is also incorrect. The answer is hippocampus. Next, number 35. In protein synthesis, which organelle is responsible for assembling amino acid into proteins? Nucleus, ribosomes, endoplasmic reticulum, or mitochondrion? The answer is okay, very good. That is ribosomes. Okay, the ribosomes, okay, are cellular structures that is organelles, no? That's the part of a cell. Okay, where translation occurs during protein synthesis. Okay, they read the sequence of mRNA and assemble the amino acid into polypeptide chains using the tRNA molecule. The ribosomes can either float freely in the cytoplasm or be attached into a rough endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, so di ba we have smooth ER and rough ER? Okay, so the rough ER becomes rough because of the ribosomes present. Okay, so kaya siya ganon. Okay, but the role of ribosomes is that one. Read the sequence of mRNA and assemble amino acids. Okay, so bakit mali ang ibang choices? Okay, let's explain nucleus. The nucleus is where transcription occurs. Okay, again, transcription occurs in nucleus. Okay, when we say transcription, that is DNA to where? mRNA. Very good. But protein synthesis, okay, translation of mRNA to protein takes place in the ribosomes, not in the nucleus. Okay, again, transcription happens in the nucleus. However, okay, protein synthesis or the translation, okay, takes place in ribosome. Okay, very good. Next, letter C. Okay, nucleus is wrong. Okay, endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, specifically the rough ER is associated with protein synthesis because it has ribosomes on its surface. But the actual assembly of amino acid into proteins is still done by the ribosomes, not the ER itself. So kumbaga si ER, it's just a site where the ribosomes are attached. Okay? So ang gumagawa sa role is si ribosome. Okay, next we have mitochondrion. Okay, mitochondria are known as the powerhouse of the cell because they produce ATP. That is the site of cellular respiration. Okay, they are not involved in the protein synthesis, although they do have their own small ribosomes for synthesizing a few of their own proteins since they need that. Okay, that would justify why it's called as the powerhouse of the cell. Okay, it has its own ribosome. Okay, but the mitochondria itself, okay, do not do the assembling of amino acid into proteins. So this is wrong. The answer is ribosome. Next number. Are you still fine there? Okay, very good. Number 36. What type of cell signaling involves hormone release into a bloodstream? Okay, the answer is okay, endocrine. Okay, so endocrine signaling is the process by which hormones are released by glands and travel through a bloodstream to reach distant target cells. This is the long-range communication system of the body used for regulating processes like metabolism, growth, and reproduction. Okay, so, di ba, we have the so-called endocrine system. Okay, so that's a type of that could be our hint, no, to choose this answer. Okay, to choose this option. All right, so why are the other options incorrect? Okay, let's start with paracrine. The paracrine signaling involves localized signaling. Again, clue word natin kay paracrine, localized signaling. Okay, that is where the chemical signals are affected by the neighboring cells within the same tissue. It does not use the bloodstream. Okay, so the paracrine signaling does not use bloodstream. Kasi localized siya. Next is autocrine. Si autocrine naman, okay, the cell targets itself. Okay, so again, autocrine, the cell targets itself. Okay, yan yung tandaan ninyo. Releasing the signals that bind to the receptors on its own surface. This is also local and does not involve circulation in the blood. So, localized gahapon si autocrine. Okay, pero it targets itself. Okay, the cell targets itself. Next, we have synaptic. Okay, synaptic signaling. is specific to neurons. Again, saan siya specific? Sa neurons. And involves the release of neurotransmitters across synaptic gap to another neurons or a muscle cell. It is the fast but very short range, not via the bloodstream. So synaptic is directly associated with the idea, okay, pertaining to neurons. So this is incorrect. Our answer for this is endocrine. Next item, which type of bond is formed between two atoms with an electronegativity difference greater than 2.0? Is it covalent, ionic, metallic, hydrogen? The answer is okay, ionic. Okay, ionic bond. So let's talk about the electronegativity difference. Okay, so take note of this. An electronegativity difference greater than 2.0 indicates a large disparity in the ability of two atoms to attract electrons. Again, I'll repeat. Electronegativity electronegativity difference greater than 2.0 indicates a large disparity in the ability of two atoms to attract electrons. In such cases, the atom with the higher electronegativity, typically non-metal, mga non-metal kadalasan, completely pulls away the electrons from the other atom, typically metal. Okay, this transfer results in the formation of positive and negative ions, which are held together by electrostatic attraction, the hallmark of the ionic bond. Okay, so take note of that. The higher electronegativity, typically non-metal, completely pulls away the electrons from the other atom, typically metal. Okay, so ganon. So that's why our answer is letter B. So let's explain A, C, and D. So, covalent bond forms when atom shares electron. Diba? Covalent bonding is the sharing of electron between nonmetals. Okay, usually with electron negativity difference less than 1.7. A difference over 2.0 is too great for sharing. So, sobra na siya. That is just uh, covered with ionic bonding. So, malose, it's either malose or magain si electron. Pag beyond 2.0 na ang electronegativity. Okay, metallic bond, I mean. Metallic bond occur between metal atoms, where electrons are delocalized across a lattice. So electronegativity difference are not relevant here, okay? Since it's just involved with metals, okay? And metals have low electronegativity mostly. So it does not have something to do with electronegativity difference. Okay, this is not relevant for metallic bond. Next is hydrogen. Okay, a hydrogen bond is a weak intermolecular force. Okay, not a bond between two atoms forming a molecule. It occurs between hydrogen atoms already covalently bonded to either nitrogen, oxygen, or fluorine, another electronegative atom. So the best answer for this is ionic bond. Next, number 38. Okay, number 38. What is the main product of the reaction between an acid and a base? Okay, this is very easy. I think this question, uh, I encountered this question actually during my time when I take the lab. Okay, the answer is okay, salt and water. Take note of that. Okay, salt and water. So the reaction between acid and base is called neutralization reaction. Again, what do you call the reaction of acid and base? Neutralization reaction. In this reaction, the hydrogen ion or H plus from the acid combines with the hydroxide ion or OH minus from the base to form what? Water. Okay, the remaining ions from the acid and base combine to form a salt. Now, why are the other options incorrect? Okay, let's start with letter A, salt and hydrogen. This is the product of reaction between acid and metal, not base. Again, so say salt and hydrogen, product siya sa reaction between acid and metal. Okay, the question is acid and base. So that is wrong. Letter C, these are the product of acid carbonate reaction. Si carbon dioxide and water, product of acid carbonate reaction. Okay, so wrong then. Si ammonia, okay, ammonia is a weak base itself and may be part of the base, but it is not a product of acid-base neutralization. Ammonia itself is a base, so it's not a product. The answer is letter B. Next item, number 39. Okay, what is the molecular geometry of carbon dioxide? Okay, what is the molecular geometry of carbon dioxide? Okay, is it bent, trigonal, linear, tetrahedral? The answer is, okay, the answer is linear. Okay, carbon dioxide has a molecular formula of, we have O and then double bond C, double bond O. Okay, that is just linear. The carbon atoms forms two double bonds, one with its oxygen atom. If we are going to draw the carbon dioxide molecular formula, that is like this. Okay, oxygen, double bond, and then carbon, double bond, oxygen. Okay, that is linear. Okay, take note. There are no lone pairs on the central carbon atom. So the electron pairs arrange themselves as part as as far apart as possible to minimize repulsion, according to VSEPR theory or valence shell electron pair repulsion. This results in a linear geometry with a bond angle of 180 degrees. So linear siya. Okay, now let's talk about the other options. Bent. Okay, a bent shape occurs when the central atom has lone pairs like hydrogen and oxygen due to two bonding pairs and two lone pairs on oxygen. Okay, so pag may two lone pairs, okay, that can be, okay, a bent. Okay, next is, so it's not linear. Next, si trigonal planar. This geometry is seen when there are three regions of electron density around the central atom. Like we have boron trifluoride or carbon dioxide has only two. Take note. We have boron trifluoride. See, carbon dioxide is example for linear. So si boron trifluoride is trigonal planar. Kumbaga, nga na yung forma. Okay, that is trigonal planar. Next is tetrahedral. Tetrahedral geometry involves four bonding pairs. Okay, as in methane, for example, we have CH4. Okay, again, carbon dioxide only has two bonding regions. Okay, sa tetrahedral, apat. Example is methane. Ganyan. Ana. Okay, that is tetrahedral. So that's it. Let's proceed to the next item. Number 40. In a redox reaction, the substance that loses electrons is reduced, oxidized, neutralized, or catalyzed. Okay, the answer is oxidized. Okay, in a redox reaction, short for reduction or oxidation, two processes happen simultaneously. Diba? We have oxidation and reduction. Okay, I want you to take note that in oxidation, that is the loss of electrons. Again, oxidation, loss of electrons. Reduction, gain of electrons. Again, take note, oxidation, loss of electrons, reduction, gain of electrons. Helpful mnemonic for that is oil rig. Okay, everybody say oil rig. Like this. O I L and then rig. R I G. Okay, that stands for oxidation is loss, reduction is gain. Again, oxidation is loss, reduction is gain. Okay, that is talking about electrons, huh? Okay, so the substance that loses electrons becomes oxidized. Okay, I hope that's clear. So, bakit wrong si letter A? As what I have said, no? Okay, a reduced substance gains electrons, not loses them. Okay, letter C, neutralized. Okay, take note that neutralization rate refers to acid-base reaction, not electron transfer. This is wrong. Catalyzed. When we say catalyst, that is something that speeds up a reaction. Okay, but it is not consumed or altered in the redox process itself. So this is wrong. The answer is oxidized. Number 41. Okay. Fossil fuels are derived from volcanic rocks, weathered soils, decomposed plants and animals, or glacial deposits. Okay, very easy. The answer is decomposed plants and animals. Okay, fossil fuels, such as what are the examples of fossil fuels? We have coal, oil, natural gas. Okay, they are found from the remains of ancient plants and animals that were buried under sediments and rock for millions of years ago. Okay, and then over time, the heat and pressure transform these remains into the carbon rich energy source. Okay, let's just have coal for example. Coal mainly comes from ancient plants in a swampy environments. Another, we have petroleum and natural gas. Typically comes from marine organisms like plankton. Okay, that's why our answer is letter C. Now, why is letter A incorrect? Okay, volcanic rocks are igneous. Okay, they are igneous and unrelated to the biological region of fossil fuels. Okay, so it's not related with fossil fuels. We have weathered soil. The soil is the product of weathering and erosion, but not generate fossil fuels. That's also wrong. We have glacial deposits. Glacial deposits results from movement of glaciers and contains rocks and debris, not organic material that decomposes into fuel. Still has nothing to do with fossil fuels. The answer is letter C. Next, number 42. The process of rock breaking down into smaller pieces due to wind, water, or ice is known as. Okay, the answer is Okay, very easy. That is weathering. Okay, take note. Weathering is the process by which rocks are broken down into smaller pieces. Again, weathering, rocks are broken down into smaller pieces. Okay, that is through physical, chemical, and biological means. Okay, it can be also mechanical uh, processes. Okay, wind, water, and ice are all agents of physical weathering that cause rocks to fracture, crumble, and disintegrate without moving the particles away. That's why we have different land formations. Okay, that's because of weathering. That's also affected by the different agents. Okay, the one that I've mentioned earlier. Okay, why are the other options incorrect? Let's start with erosion. Okay, erosion involves the movement or transport of rock. Okay, take note ha, pag sinabing erosion, that is the movement or transport of rocks. Again, erosion, movement, or transport of rocks and soils. Okay, after weathering has occurred. Okay, it happens after rocks are broken down. So, kumbaga, weathering happens first, then erosion follows. Next is sedimentation. Ano naman yung sedimentation? That is the depositing of particles carried by erosion. Kumbaga, that is the conglomeration of particles. Na compact ang particles. Okay, typically in bodies of water or low-lying areas. Okay. Next is crystallization. Crystallization refers to the formation of crystals from a liquid or gas and not the breaking down of rocks. So that is incorrect. The answer is weathering. Alright, next. Number 43. The deepest part of the world's ocean is the Mariana Trench, Great Barrier Reef, Atlantic Ridge, or Pacific Basin. The answer is okay, Mariana Trench. We all know this. Okay, the Mariana Trench is the deepest part of the world's ocean. Okay, it is located in the Western Pacific Ocean. Its deepest point, known as the Challenger Deep, reaches a depth of approximately 10,984 meters. That is 36,000 approximately feet. No, that's approximately 36,000 feet. It is the lowest known point on the Earth seabed. Okay, why are the other options incorrect? Let's talk about these three para magkaroon tayo ng idea kung ano ang mga ito. Okay, let's have first Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef is the largest coral reef system. Again, Great Barrier Reef, that is the largest coral reef system in the world, located off the coast of Australia. It is not the deepest part of the ocean. Okay. Next is the Atlantic Ridge. Okay, so Atlantic Ridge, also known as Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Okay. It is an underwater mountain range, not the deepest part of the ocean. It is known for volcanic activity, but it is not the deepest point. Okay, so this is also incorrect. Next is Pacific Basin. The Pacific Basin refers to the large area of the Pacific Ocean, but it doesn't specify the deepest part. Okay, the Mariana Trench is within the Pacific Ocean, but the basin itself is not the deepest. Okay, so kumbaga, the best answer and specific answer for this is Mariana Trench. Next, number 44. The greenhouse gas most commonly produced by human activities is oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen. The answer is very easy. carbon dioxide. Okay, tayo kadalasan yung gumagawa nito. Our activities mostly results to this compound. Carbon dioxide is the most significant greenhouse gas produced by human activities. It is primarily released through the burning of fossil fuels such as coal, oil, and natural gas. Okay, deforestation and certain industrial processes are some activities related to this. Okay, we are all guilty with this, especially industrial processes. Halos kada isa na sa atin may sariling sasakyan. Okay, how can we solve that? Okay, we do mass transportation, pero uncomfortable man siya, so mostly we'll have our private vehicles, okay, which emits more carbon dioxide. Okay, carbon dioxide is a major contributor to the greenhouse effect, which leads to global warming and climate change. Okay. Bakit mali si oxygen? Of course, hindi tayo yung gumagawa ng oxygen. Oxygen is a vital component of the air, but it is not a greenhouse gas. Okay? It does not trap heat in the atmosphere the same way carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases do. So, this is not the answer. Nitrogen, take note ha, that nitrogen makes up about 78% of the Earth's atmosphere, but is not the greenhouse gas. It does not contribute to the greenhouse effect. So this is also not the answer. Hydrogen, while hydrogen can be a part of greenhouse gas, let's say for example water vapor, okay, that's part of a greenhouse gas, there's hydrogen there. It is not primarily produced by human activities in large quantities. That's why it's not the best answer. The carbon dioxide is the key gas produced by human actions, particularly burning of fossil fuels. Okay, next, number 45. Okay, number 45. Which of the following is considered a renewable energy source? Coal, oil, natural gas, solar power. Okay, very good. That's the solar power. Okay, let's talk about renewable and non-renewable energy source. So pag sinabi nating renewable, okay, yung tandaan ninyo class is renewable means hindi nauubos. Again, renewable, hindi nauubos. Okay, non-renewable, na uubos. Okay, mauubos ba yung solar power? Mauubos ba yung heat ng sun? Okay, hindi. That's why it is considered renewable energy source because it harnesses the energy from the sun. It is inexhaustible and available as long as the sun exists. Okay, the solar energy can be used to generate electricity through solar panels and other technologies, making it a sustainable option for reducing reliance on fossil fuels and minimizing environmental impact. So the coal, oil, and natural gas are example of non-renewable energy source. Okay, let's proceed to the next item, number 46. The acid rain is primarily caused by emissions of carbon dioxide and methane, oxygen and nitrogen, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide, argon or and neon. Okay, the answer is okay, sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. Okay, so acid rain occurs when sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides are released into the atmosphere. So pag mix na sila, there comes the acid rain, primarily from the burning of fossil fuels like coal and oil. These gases react with the water vapor, oxygen and other chemicals in the atmosphere to form sulfuric acid and nitric acid. which then fall to the Earth's surface as acid rain. The acid rain can harm ecosystems, damage buildings, and negatively impact human health. Okay, so delikado ni siya sa mga sasakyan. Okay? Kasi it can cause it can lead to sa tawag ana kanang ma-erode or ma-oxidize o matayaan sa Bisaya pa. Okay? So, let's talk about the other options. Why are the other options incorrect? So, carbon dioxide and methane. Okay, these gases contribute to global warming. Okay, not acid rain. Okay, and then oxygen and nitrogen naman, okay, that is the most abundant gases in the atmosphere. Okay, but they do not contribute to acid rain formation. Okay, argon and neon. Okay, so argon and neon are inert gas in the atmosphere and do not contribute to the acid rain. So the answer is letter C. Next, number 47. Which of the following practices helps to conserve biodiversity? Okay, deforestation, overfishing, wildlife conservation, pollution. Okay, so it asks for a positive activity, okay, conservation of biodiversity. So our answer must be positive. Okay, letter A, negative, B, negative, C, positive, letter D, negative. So the answer is, okay, wildlife conservation. Okay, that is a very easy item. I think there's no need for this to elaborate. Easy ra siya kaayo. Next, number 48. Ozone depletion is mainly caused by water vapor, CFCs, carbon dioxide, or nitrogen gas. Okay, the answer is CFCs or the chlorofluorocarbons. Okay, these compounds are primary chemicals responsible for ozone depletion. When released into the atmosphere, the CFCs rise to the stratosphere where are broken down into they are broken down by the ultraviolet radiation. This process releases chlorine atoms and then break apart ozone molecules, leading to the thinning of the ozone layer. The ozone layer is crucial for protecting the life on Earth from the harmful UV radiation. So, saan natin siya makukuha? What things cause it to be released? We have aerosols, refrigerators. Okay, so let's talk about the other options. Option A, water vapor can contribute to greenhouse effect, but it does not play a significant role in ozone depletion. Okay, so mali siya. So si letter C, carbon dioxide, that is a major greenhouse gas contributing to the global warming, but it does not directly cause ozone depletion. Nitrogen gas as well. Okay, see, nitrogen gas is a stable component of the atmosphere and does not have significant impact on the ozone depletion. Next, number 49. The variety of life in an ecosystem is known as, okay, variety, okay, biomass, biodiversity, biogeography, or biome. The answer is biodiversity. Okay, let's talk about biodiversity. Okay, biodiversity refers to the variety and variability of life form within an ecosystem. So, yung pagkakaiba-iba ng life forms sa ecosystem. It encompasses the diversity of species, genes, ecosystems, as well as ecological processes that supports them. A high level of biodiversity is often an indicator of healthy ecosystem. Okay, so mostly okay, nasa a tropical rainforest. Okay, a large dense of population of species. Okay, so why are the other options incorrect? Okay, biomass. Ano naman si biomass? Okay, pag sinabi nating biodiversity, that's variety of life in ecosystem. Pag sinabi nating biomass, that is the total mass of living organism in a given area. Again, biomass, total mass of living organism in a given area or ecosystem at a particular time, of course. While biomass is related to the quantity of life, it does not describes the variety of life, which is what biodiversity represents. That's why this is not the correct answer. Next is biogeography. So biogeography is the study of geographic distribution of species and ecosystems over time. Okay, so maiintindihan naman sa iyahang word, okay, geography, biogeography, okay. So that's the geographic distribution of species. Next, letter D, biome. When we say biome, that is a large geographical area characterized by specific climatic conditions and the type of plants and animals that thrive there. Okay, while biomes influence biodiversity, they are not synonymous with biodiversity itself, which refers to the variety of life within an ecosystem regardless of biome. Okay, so this is not the correct answer. The answer is letter B, biodiversity. Okay, number 50. Okay, what term is used for species at risk of extinction? Endangered, endemic, exotic, indigenous. The answer is endangered. Okay, are familiar with the term endangered species? Okay, so an endangered species is one that is at risk of becoming extinct due to the variety of factors such as habitat loss, overexploitation, climate change, and environmental degradation. Also, harmful human activities. Okay, these species are critically low in population and needs conservation efforts to prevent them from disappearing. Example, in the Philippines, we have the Philippine eagle. Okay, extinct na siya, very endangered. So that's it. Our answer is endangered. Okay, let's talk about endemic. Ano naman yung endemic? Endemic species are those that are found only in a specific geographical area and nowhere else in the world. While they can be at risk, the term endemic does not specifically imply a species is at risk of extinction. It simply referred to restricted distribution. Okay, so endemic, murabag ka ng a certain species located in a specific area, geographical area that is endemic. Next is exotic. Ano naman yung exotic? When we say exotic species, they are those that are not native to a particular area or ecosystem, often introduced through human activity. These species are not necessarily at risk of extinction. In fact, some may thrive in new environments. Exotic just refers to their origin, not their risk of extinction. So, this is not the answer still. Next is indigenous. Pag sinabi nating indigenous species, these are natives, okay, to a particular region or environment. May mga nitibo. While this species can be endangered, the term indigenous itself doesn't indicate the risk of extinction, but rather it refers to their native status in a specific location. So the best answer for item number 50 is endangered. Okay, so we are already in item number 50, and I think we'll stop here. Okay, and I do hope that you have learned something from the second part of our science major rationalization. If you have question, don't forget to comment there. Okay, you can ask questions, and I will try my best to respond to all your queries. And I do hope that you're open for engagement there. Okay, you can connect with me, and if you also want, you can join our GC. Okay, Messenger, via Messenger. I will just put a link in the comments section perhaps so that you can join the GC. So thank you so much for joining our online rationalization, and I do hope and pray for your success in the upcoming September 2025 lab. God bless, Jaguars, and see you next time. Goodbye for now.